sorry to everybody for this. It's the first week we've actually had technical difficulties, and everybody's had technical difficulties. So yeah, let's see, where were we? Let's go back to.
Kind of feel like we should have entered with, and that is the secret to craft beer.
Mike, tell us about this beer, because you were telling us at the start, and then you got caught.
Yeah, and nothing was coming out there with it. So yeah, this one, like I think you touched on, it's more traditional, and I think about it that in the sense of the taste is, in that its color is red, its flavor is malty but not sweet, and that's a big I want to try for with that, because I don't, from what I've read of Irish red ales, like they weren't something that would have been particularly sweet. So, in that sense, it's traditional, but for the beer, for the brewing, it's more modern. And that one of the things I think that makes that beer is the Red X malt from Best Maltings in Germany. It's I guess relatively new, maybe about 10 years ago. In the last 10 years it came out. And for that, it really gives that depth of maltiness, but also that color, which, I really, in all the pilots that we did before we came out with that, it was always trying to get that color right, where it wasn't too copper or too amber, but it was red. And that was a big part of that beer is using the Red X in that.
Yeah, I think the color of it, my eye first, like it's a little bit lighter than what you normally expect. When you kind of get in a red ale, the normal way of a red ale just be a bit of black malt or roast barley.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's definitely, it's really, the color is lovely. It's very sessionable.
Yeah, no, trying to keep the ABV down to make it that sessionable strength is important with it too, I think, because that's what you want to be for it, I think. But yeah, I mean, and the hops in that are just Goldings, so it's trying to keep it at a low level, the 15-minute addition at the end, and then the beginning to boil, and that's it. But trying to balance out any kind of maltiness with it.
It's nice, really clean,
but not going beyond that.
I think some of the issues I have with the style ale is, like, the BJCP descriptions.
Yeah.
Things like diacetyl and all this included in it, and carbon bombs. I mean, it what they describe as septic. It's
trying to get the acetyl. It's good to break out of those types of molds, I think, with it in little ways, because I would never find that a tasty beer with the diacetyl in it.
Yeah. It'd be too much.
Is that like how you did that? Is that going to be dictated a lot by the fact that you're in Killarney? There's a lot of tourism. Do you have to kind of tailor it?
Yeah, I mean, truth be told, with that beer, like, it's not like I really like it, and it's not a huge seller for us. It was starting to pick up for the pandemic, and then I think that quashed it a little bit. It does, like, within our pub here in the tap room, it definitely drives a lot of Americans towards it, because they're in Ireland and they want to drink an Irish red. So that certainly does fill that. Outside of Killarney, it's not a huge seller, but we're trying to push it more in bottle now, out at some shops more, and we'll see where that goes. It was starting to sort of take off on draft for us, because I think places were looking at it as a craft alternative to Smithwick's. But then that got crushed by. We made one batch of it last year. So, it is. I think you're probably right to a degree that being where we are does drive a little bit of that, and we're able to get making that beer on a regular basis.
Right. Yeah. So talking about the COVID, I mean, you would have been hit probably the hardest of the three of you by COVID, because you didn't. It was all on site, was it?
No. Most, like, I guess our difference is that we're very heavy on draft beer, because the effort that's been put in over the years to be in the pubs down here for the tourist trade has been great until there's no more tourists and the pubs are closed. So that hit us pretty hard with that. And that outside here at the brewery, there's the stacks of kegs we have sitting around. Can tell that, but. Yeah, I mean, that's we were heavy on draft for us compared to most breweries in Ireland, I'd say, and that hurt us a bit with that. So we've trying to been trying to make that up with our bottle sales, and getting into cans too soon eventually.
Right.
Yeah, that's the ironic thing I think about being a brewery in Ireland is the draft is so difficult that whenever COVID hit, a lot of the smaller guys, because we're all set up for small pack anyway, we're producing the majority of our beer in bottles and cans because there's very little, of a draft market. It was a bit of a blessing in disguise for breweries in Ireland. There's small breweries in Ireland because you look at breweries in England and stuff that a lot of the smaller breweries start out focused very heavily on that, and don't have the infrastructure for doing the small pack. They were hit really hard, so I guess that was one blessing to come out of COVID thing.
Yeah, and do you think?
One thing I'd add with the drafting is I think that is true, and I think what we've been lucky with over the years is being down here. There has been that element of a pub in this area with the tourist trade. People do ask for local beer, so it helped us get our foot in the door because they would be looking for something that they'd hear these people coming through the doors asking, "What's the local beer? What's the local beer?" And that's, I think, part of the bigger benefit of crafts or small brewing around the world. People drink local now, and that's just more of a bigger picture. And that helped us with the draft accounts, I think, because we were there to do that for a lot of these pubs. As soon as someone came asking, we had a tap line in there, and we were quick to move on that. So, mostly, you've been to Killarney, it's touristy, and it's helped us to be in these pubs that mostly are dominated by Heineken and Diageo.
Yeah.
And do you think that'll stay? Because I've been hearing, like, on the other sessions we have, that people are saying that they're worried that when the whole draft, the whole pubs reopen, that Heineken and Diageo will just basically buy the bar taps and kick everyone else off.
Yeah.
No, I don't. Yeah, I'm not privy to that side of the conversation. I don't know what that is, but the one thing I would say definitely through the last summer when things did open in a limited way, one of the things we saw was people going back to what they're comfortable with drinking. People were less willing to, like, on draft here at our tap room, like, we'd have small batch. We have like a 1 keg at a time brew magic. We'd do some wackier stuff, and we had trouble shifting that because people would come in and just drink the new stout or the new the lager. And I feel like that was just, I don't know if it was a reflection of the bigger thing with the pandemic that people just wanted to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Familiarity of something they were drinking or what, but.
Yeah, I think it's the other that flipped the coin as well. When the pandemic happened, a lot of people started trying a lot of new stuff as well that they never tried. Like there's like especially cocktails in a can. There's a lot of cocktail companies which is popping up. Do you know what I mean? A lot of sort of compounders and a lot of mixologists who are like selling from like nightclubs and stuff. And people were just like jumping on the cocktail train, which is really, I know it's a bit off topic with beer, but people wanted that sort of sense of having being in a bar in their own house. Do you know what I mean? And that's why, like,
you can see that being like another night in. You want to try something new.
Yeah, and that's why I'm just like, why did the surgery can Guinness not come in? Like, why did I hit that straight away last year, 12 months ago, and capitalize on that? So but we definitely noticed people were trying a lot more different stuff, and like with the definitely online orders and things.
Yeah, there's a lot of people locally who were buying beer and saying, "I've never had your beer before," but we're all about supporting local now during the pandemic sort of thing, which was always good.
Yeah.
No, I think just steering this back around to the malt thing, like what you guys were mentioning earlier. We were talking a little bit offline about the Marzen you did, and I think overall in the sense of malty beers, it's sort of what we talked about. They're a hard sell to a degree.
Yeah.
The red ale isn't one of our best sellers by far. It's a hard one to sell. We used to make a Marzen we were talking about, but that we just stopped making it because I for whatever reason I think it's a hard sell to sell malty beers.
It's not really like in vogue at the minute.
Yeah,
they're like poppy beers kind of sewn it up.
Some styles, like the fashion follows America, right? And over there, lagers are, again, for probably the 4th year in a row, they're saying, lager's the next big thing, but it's IPA is still the big thing, right? But the problem we have here is we've got access to such, like guys were saying up there, we've got access to such good lagers here from the continent. Like, it's very hard to go out and compete against that, It's the same.
We have to charge more as well. That's the thing. Like, our cost of production higher, so it's like you get the local offering of like a really traditional German style, and it's more expensive than the actual original.
And also, like the duty, like obviously UK duty that we pay in Northern Ireland and your duty are amongst the highest in Europe. And you can buy beer directly from Germany and pay the German duty on it and get it delivered to your house.
Yeah.
There's no way we can compete with that.
So you have to kind of focus on the being local.
Yeah, well, I suppose like with the margin and stuff, it's kind of an indulgence on our part. It's like, well, we just want to make it, and like it's not going to sell as well as other stuff, but like we want to make it, we want to drink it, but you can only do that every so often. Like obviously, you have to sell stuff.
Otherwise, you're the same as me, guys. You're the same as me. I do the undertone dark lager because I want to have it in the fridge here. So you're trying to sell it,
Lauren Savage is looking to come on, so I'm going to ask him to pop up. He has something to say.
Hello.
Lawrence.
Hello.
Hello. We can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Well, it should be soon anyway. It's mainly a question for Bullhouse. I'm just is there any chance you'll bring it back?
We lost you there. We only got the El Capitan. Well, I can't say for definite, but what we do have at the moment is that we are doing another empty stouts in the people from Dublin are kindly give us 5 barrels of fresh washed barrels, and we're literally just aging those at the moment out in our barrel store. We have 1,000 litres of an empty stout in fresh Dubliner casks.
It went in at about 8%, I think. So
yeah,
we'll see. We'll get it tested after it comes out of the barrels, but it won't be exactly an El Capitan, but it'll be something.
El Capitan was used with the barrels,
but El Capitan will come back. Yeah, so at some stage we'll brew it again. We're trying to think of other beers that we'll brew again, but yeah, we'll bring it back at some stage. So.
Keep an eye out.
Yeah.
Do you know anybody who can do his barrels?
Thanks, Lawrence. There's just one more question before maybe we move on to the next beer, which is someone had a question here. Yeah, sorry, they missed it. Paul was wondering, where red in the red ale come from? What malts? I think you already addressed this, but we might have been broken down at the time.
Yeah. I mean, I would say so. Our beer, it's a mix basically of pale malt and red X. That's where we get most of the color from, and then with the, the last little bit comes from a touch of crystal and melanoidin malt, which I like using as well. That's most of the color from that.
And you said the red X is new.
I mean, not new. I would say, in the last 10 years it came out. It's not one of these malts that's been around forever, like a Carapils or something like that.
Right.
I want to say they probably did, but it's a German malt from Best Malting.
Okay. Okay. So look, we spent in all our things here. Maybe we'll get on to yours, Mark. Your variety you were explaining doesn't fit into any category at all.
A mongrel, yeah.
Maybe you should have called it mongrel.
Any question? Type it.
You guys tried this one? What did you think of it?
What?
No, I'm just asking if the other guys have tried this one.
Yeah, no, I mean,
yeah.
One thing about it I thought was just amazing, like how drinkable it is for its strength. That's really amazing. Like, it really gives that balance of the malt hop kind of character.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. I think I generally make beers on the higher side of ABV as a general rule, and I think like one of the things I always try to do with them is getting the finish quite dry again, same like your beer. So a clean fermentation and a dry finish, and you can be surprised what you're making, So I think one of the big issues we had with this beer was we called it a red IPA for the want of, we have to put it into some category, right? But it's not. It's not like a red IPA because it's not full of crystal malt, right? There's very little malt in this at all. and I think I found it hard to describe. But really, what I did was I took an Irish red ale approach to an IPA. Was what I tried to do with it. And you guys probably know yourself that when you start putting the darker crystal and stuff like that into a hoppy beer, it runs down the hops very quickly. Like it takes over, faster than. So it's a beer that you really, if you want to get it hoppy, you have to get it really fresh, and after that, the malt over, So
but it's really clean again, and the good body to it as well.
Yeah, it's got a very silky mouth.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. It's so clean like that; it just goes right down like that.
Yeah.
No, I'd second that with the crystal. Like we make our red IPAs, the Scarlet Pimpernel we do, and that's another one. Like over the years, I've just cut back every little bit from the crystal in it because it just takes so much away from the hops.
Yeah, it's weird. It affects the hops so much. Because you can taste it out of the tank. You're going, wow, it's an IPA. We can sell this as an IPA. And 3 weeks in the can, and it's just like it's a red, So it's a tricky one to balance. We did another red imperial called Rabbit Hole after this, and I think that one was about around 8%. But we really laid the hops on heavy on that one, and it was delicious, fresh. It's only out really about 2 months, so I don't know how it'll age, but I expect it'll go the same way, it'll deteriorate very quickly because of the dark malt in there,
Yeah.
So do you recommend then that's one you have to drink as soon as it hits the shelves, like?
I think the IPAs, you need to drink them fresh. I think the paler the IPA, the longer it'll last.
Okay. We've got a black IPA going at the minute, and it had I think 15 kilo dry hop in it. But we're basically doing a New England take on a black IPA. But already you can kind of see from the hops going in fresh, and you got that super, when you smelt it, the roastiness was there to a certain extent, but it's not like pale beer with a bit of roastiness in the back end. But as it's conditioned, it's just all that fresh fruity hoppiness is really just taking a backseat, and the roastiness comes through. So even in the space of a few weeks, you can see that change. Obviously, it's darker. It was chocolate malt and that, but you still get you do see that sort of deterioration, not deterioration, but the hops take a backseat and the malt really comes through. So it's probably more along the lines of a hoppy porter now. And we used a Sanders, a London Fog Ale yeast in it, so it's got all the fruity estery stuff when you taste it, but it's just all malt on the nose.
It's very deceiving as well when you're looking at a black beer, a very dark beer, and smelling it's this hop aroma coming, all these sort of fruit punch bowl, sort of tutti frutti things. It always catches you off guard, which is because that's the first black IPA we've ever done.
There's a couple out at the moment, actually. I know that Wicklow Wolf did black IPA, and I'm trying to think. I think Third Barrel did one as well. So it'd be interesting to pick one up and see how it holds up if somebody's found a way to kind of keep the hops in the forefront on them. But I don't know what the science is behind it, but just my experience is that they do really kind of go off a cliff. The darker it is, the quicker it goes down.
Yeah, it depends how you're getting the color into the beer as well, in terms of the malts that you're using, and that's how dark you want to go, and how much how far down the malt you want to go in terms of your
the more dark, bitter, roasty malts. Obviously, I think they'll just completely cut through the hop anyway. You can't really pair those with hops because you'll only taste the bitter, roasty malt. You won't taste the hops.
I think the weird thing is that it seems to affect the aroma more than the flavor. That's what really kind of melts my head.
I'd say the same thing. I find on our red IPA, it tends to, it goes downhill fairly quickly, and it's not that it's bad a couple months in, it just changes to a different beer.
Yeah. I think we get spoiled as well though, because when you get it fresh, just straight out of the tank or whatever, when you're taking your samples, you want it to just stay you want to freeze frame it there. You're this is class, right? Freeze frame this is what goes out, and unfortunately it doesn't quite work like that. But
What then for you? You've got it where you think it is, and then that maybe someone mightn't drink it for 6 months. What are you going to do?
That's it. That's just the part and parcel, isn't it?
You can't do anything about that, really, Brian. I mean, we're not Diageo. Like, we can't pasteurize our beers and make them for shipping around the world. You know, I mean, we're small breweries. Our stuff is unfiltered, uncentrifuged. We don't use finings really, generally, in any of the beers. So, like, once they're going to go into the can, they're going to change. And it's like any kind of fresh product. You know, it's going to change. You need to. I mean, not necessarily for the worst. I mean, it might change for the better. You know, it depends. You know, like so. You do a big stuff.
Sometimes that happens for sure. Like a couple of weeks in can, and then you're getting flavors from like a hoppy New England. You get different flavors from when it was in the tank. Better flavors sometimes as well. Yeah. So it does work both ways.
Yeah, but people kind of expect that with, say, I don't know, spontaneous fermented beers and stuff. They know that they're aged and that they change, but do they really expect it like on something like Idle or your PA?
I actually think you should expect it more on those sort of beers, because like something like a spontaneous fermentation that's had 3 years in a barrel is going to have stabilized out a lot more than something that's come out of a tank and been fermented 2 weeks ago. Especially with lots of hops in it. Like, the hops are the first thing that's going to take the hit. You know.
Yeah.
So.
But especially with the New England style, where all your hops are going in during or towards the end of fermentation, and those are like the most volatile things. Like sometimes you see beers with like 3 month sell by date or a 6 month sell by date on them, and that's just basically that they're saying we can't say that this is going to taste as it should beyond that 6 month period, so we don't want to put a 12 month sell by on it. We want you to get it, drink it fresh.
You definitely notice after 3 months deterioration and
well,
don't started on the best before dates, guys, because it wrecks my head. Like, it wrecks my head. We've had to destroy beer, right, because we put a best before date on it that the distributors wouldn't take, right? So, and there's nothing. The beer, like, this best before is a concept. I don't know, like, it should, like, I understand the ones used by, right?
Yeah.
Where like that, where it's going to poison you if you don't eat it. But on something like a beer, why don't they have best before dates on one? You know?
Yeah.
I think it's a problem, and it's like they treat the beer like a can of beans or something like that. So many of these distributors, it's like that. The way it's treated it's not how good it is. They want a number, they want a date in there. Possible.
Yeah, I think who it was now last week, we were talking cider, and I can't remember the exact details. I'd have to go back, but there was some reason, and if you did it in some way, you didn't have to have a best before date on the cider. If you skipped that stage or you didn't do this thing, then you had to have a best before date, and it didn't seem to make much sense, really.
I got a can of beer recently, and it had 10 years best before date on it, right? So, which I thought was genius, and I was kind of a mind, right from now on, I'm just going to put a package date on it and a 10-year best before date on it, right?
Be tempting though. Definitely would be.
And I think for one of we used to do an Imperial Stout at Christmas time, aged in barrels, and it was a quest for the Milky Way, and we put about 5 or 10 years on the best before. Just because it's going to get better, in 20 years' time. Even if it oxidizes, you're going to get loads of nice sherry flavors, and it's going to keep getting better.
Is it purely up to you to decide what the best before date is? Or? It's
completely arbitrary. You just pick it out of thin air, basically.
Decide on the day when you're setting up the labeler. I would be able to put on this way.
Depending on the standard. Obviously as well.
You're not going to put a 10-year
add that
on a hoppy beer.
All our sour beers have a best for 1 week, and then that's it.
And they have to be kept in the fridge, otherwise they'll explode.
Packaging date is much more honest way to go, Packaging date would be.
The born on the packaging date. I'd agree. I wish, ultimately, like, we're limited in our packaging line right now, but I'd like to be able to have the ability to put 2 lines like that, where it's sort of the date it's packaged on, and so people know.
It also helps you as well, because there's a lot of things that can happen over a day, not like colossal things, but just with packaging and running to the can line. If anything ever goes wrong, just knowing that can date, you can pinpoint stuff that might have happened, whether it had been overcarbonation, if there had been head pressure in the tank and there had been absorbed carbon dioxide, and it would have maybe sort of carved beer a bit too much, and then you're wondering why that was packaged that way. These wee things all help for us as well. But it's also great having the canned on it just for the consumer. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think because that's one of the things I there's so many educated, beer drinkers out there, and you can make your own decision. I think rather than having a best before date, if you at least have both on there, and you can be like, okay, this is an IPA. I personally, I don't like drinking them past 2 months, let's say. But malty red ale, I'll give it 4 or 5, kind of thing, so people can make the decision. So I think you're definitely trying to do more of that, and have the packaged on date or the born on date kind of thing.
Well, I definitely appreciate it. Like if I'm in a bottle shop or whatever, I like to know how fresh it is generally, and the best before date's only half the story, isn't it?
Yeah. Best before date's only on a beer is that if you can kind of infer what the packaging date was from it, maybe some like put 9 months, 6 months, 12 months, and that's about it. It's used beyond that, if you ask me.
It's a common thing. Like here, back, we'd always have back before the pandemic, when we had all the tourists through. Like a lot of times, I'll hang out at our tap room here, and the amount of times, one of the first things I always tell American, like when you have like American people who are really into beer and they're asking about that, I'll tell them like, look, most beer, if we look at date, that's probably a year, and that's not the norm in the States. Like you might have 3 months, 6 months, never more than that, really. So that's always one of my first warnings to them when I tell them to go down to the bottle shop down the street. Is just like, when you look at that, just keep in mind it's probably a year, because that's most common here, and as a warning of that. Whereas like, they're going to look at it and think it was 3 months ago, and I'm like, yeah, you're going to be really disappointed. That hazy IPA was
Mike, I'll tell you the reason why they put a year on them, right? Is because the importers won't take beer with less than 9 months left on it, right? And in Italy, like, it's 12 months plus. So if you put 12 months on your can, if you don't have a forward order on that, you're not getting into Italy. Like, so it's
Yeah.
We had that thing with actually an Italian distributor using currently, and which is the first thing we ever came across, where there was like, can you send us a beer that has been packaged for 3 months? One of your holiday beers. And that was the first time we ever experienced it. I was like, that's actually a really good way of identifying the freshness of your beer and how you're pitching, and
how it holds up.
How it holds up. And that was really cool. And I was like, I actually respect that, the fact that that is like a really big sort of input for quality in itself. To just like, give us a 3 month hoppy beer, and then we'll talk. And I was like, so lucky enough, our beer hold up over 3 months.
3 months and 1 day after that. 3 months after that first day,
and then it's gone to shag after that.
Train for.
Right, well, I'd see that Lars there, or Lawrence says he still has two. Mike, he has 2 holes, or Mark, he has 2 rabbit holes in the fridge. Maybe he should hurry up and start drinking them.
Definitely drink them now. No, Lar, get them in before dinner. Late to the party at the house.
And you have it here, scientific proof that you have to do it. Like, there's no argument.
I want to see photos.
So so guys up in Belfast there, what ones would you want?
Yeah, so we sent down Big Accident, which is packaged actually. When was it? It was canned on the 31st of March. So pretty 10 days ago, 11 days ago. So it's a double IPA, in which we didn't have any of our standard like kind of 6 and 7% IPA. So it's an 8% double IPA that we sent down to the guys. So it's one of our core beers is Small Axe, which is a session IPA, 4.3%. This is it's not quite the same recipe double, but it's essentially that's the plan was it's double Small Axe. The dry hop bill.
Oh, you got a Mark brew?
Yeah, that's what I ended up getting too.
You got a Mark brew?
Okay.
I will get some Mark brew. Get some Mark
Which one?
Well, to be fair, that Mark brew was packaged in January, so that's going to be a good test because that was
3 months.
20th January maybe on that can.
Yeah, I think it was 21st of January. Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah, from memory. So we wanted to test out this 3 months shelf life thing. So Mark Brew is a 6.5% New England, and it's got Galaxy, Simcoe, and Mosaic in it. So it's one of our core beers. So we actually we have some tank at the minute ready to package, but that was the I think that was the last batch we did in January. So hopefully it's held up okay.
The weird thing is when he brought the big axe in, I was like, I think this is a different beer that we're supposed to be in. I didn't think anything. I was like, maybe just bring a big axe just because it's 8% and we're not going to get a steam on. I don't know. And then I was like, oh, as soon as you guys said it, I was like, I fucking knew that this was a different beer.
But yeah, so Mark Brew, standard kind of New England, it goes really well for us. So hopefully, hopefully it's held up okay. Laura actually in the comments asked a question about getting beer into the south, and for Northern Irish, it's actually weird because it's very rare to see beer from the south up here on the shelves, and seeing vice versa. There's only a few breweries, send beers over, both ways, and it's because I guess the importer has to pay the duty on it. So you have to find a distributor. We can't just say we had a bar in the dog wanted to order a keg off us. We can't just drive that down over the border and sell it to them. The bar in the dog would have to import and pay the duty on it in the south, and we would have to send it under EU movement of goods, and we'd have to have a movement guarantor as well. So it's not as tricky. It's not as simple as just sending the beer down. You have to have a distributor. So we have a distributor lined up, but we've just been hopefully have an order with them this month. So we'll hopefully get a pallet down in the not too distant future. It's actually one of the benefits of the protocol in terms of Brexit for breweries based in Northern Ireland is that we're still part of the single market, so we can send our beer to Europe as normal. So we picked up distributors in Spain and Italy on the back of Brexit, which has been good, and hopefully picking one up in the Netherlands as well. But we still got one in the south, so it makes more sense to send it to the south than it does to send it to Italy. But
down south is like the first place that we try to get in as well. Like knocking on the door, and then like other things are happening faster.
Nope. So it's like, yeah, we have it now. Cool.
Yeah. Rather be down the road, like, but okay. Wow.
Yeah, that's a bit strange.
Well, yeah, hopefully within the next couple of months we should have.
I'll just go back. You couldn't legally get a keg to Dundalk. You probably could. None of the guys in Dundalk.
Yeah. No comment. No comment.
But we have done a few bits and pieces. Like back at the start of 2019, Shane Long from Franciscan Wells set us up on a road trip around Ireland. We did a 7-day tap takeover, different pubs around. So started in Galway, second night was in Dingle, and the Mark Brew beer, Mick, to my right here, your left, actually used to drive an old Mercedes, and was on the trip. And on the second night down in Dingle, the Mercedes broke down. And Mick had to sit on the back of a keg for the rest of the trip around Cork, Waterford, Wexford, Dublin, and then back up to Belfast. And so that's the name of this beer came from that trip.
And then I had to 3 weeks later go down and get that fucking car as well, but via public transport, which was shite. Yeah. So yeah. But
I guess it'd be good to get your guys' take on this.
Yeah, that was the last couple of cans I found there as well. So
yeah,
let's see. We're in luck finding a couple there.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a little less hops and more. My nose had some of that cherry puree me in it.
Oh, yeah.
That it had, and it was a little, but you got more in the flavor, I'd say. The body, I would say one of the things that was great about it, in terms of drinkability, was the body was amazing. And I guess it's one of your core beers, like whatever you guys are doing with the malts in there and the fermentation, it's really nice. It's definitely got that really chewiness to it. It's really awesome.
So I think there might be a.
Yeah, well, we actually noticed we moved location back in September, and previously we were out in Newton Ard, so about 10 miles east of Belfast, and the mains water supply comes from the Moor Mountains and Lovelock water, and then you move into Belfast, and it's kind of medium hardness, medium sort of towards the hard side of things, and it's coming from Lough Neagh. So we noticed we had to change things in terms of the water profile quite a bit. So that was something.
Back to square one on the salts and stuff, but I think with that, it didn't take too long to get it dialed in again. I think it's pretty much there or thereabouts now. So
it was very strange at the start because we noticed coming from very soft water. We noticed like the HLT, just like that build up that you get. It's so weird. Like that's the first time we've ever been introduced to hard water, and even with like kettle elements and stuff. I'm like, wow, this is really weird. It gives more of like an indication, like how
the amount of lime scale
can build up with hard water, and how it actually can affect everything. Like you can visually see it. Because you can see it, obviously, like you can taste it. But when you visually see it, you're like, wow, that's actually pretty amazing. So and from soft water to hard water, it was.
Yeah. How did you try and adapt to that then? Did you change your ingredients, or did you try and adapt water to change the water?
So we would always have like changed the water profile with the addition of salts and different salts. So we just had to scrap what we were doing up in Ards and then just work it out again down to sit down here. But there are calculators and things you can use that kind of give you a bit of a bearing as to what to start with, and then you can tweak it from there. So just being a process of tweaking it slightly, but it wasn't that, it didn't take that long to get it back to where we were happy with it. So
we don't have an RO filter.
With the harder water, you tend to end up with a more drinkable beer a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's probably we're just about the salts rather than because before we were using a lot of salts with the soft water, so it's kicking things out. But we're using a lot less gypsum than we used to because we used to. And the chloride to sulfate ratio is heavily skewed in terms of chloride on nearly all the beers that we're brewing.
Probably notice it more in our pails. I think. Yeah.
Our water down at the brewery is really soft. Like it's fantastic water to start with. But when I was brewing back home brewing, like the water at the house was like mint coming out of the tap, everything. So like I was doing everything with RO water when I was home brewing, and then adding the salts in from there. But it's great to have a good starting water. Makes life a lot easier.
No, it's a huge challenge. Like that's what one of the things I'm so relieved. Like with the new place that we're moving to, it's still in Killarney and it's on the same water system. And it's an enormous burden that's gone of not having to do what you guys had to go through of like switching your water source like that when you move. It's just one more thing you don't have to worry about of like switching the other side of town, but we're still on the same water system.
I'm guessing the water's pretty soft down there, is it, Mike?
It is, yeah. There's very little minerals in anything. So like you guys were saying at Bullhouse, so I'm adding salts for a lot of the beers. Everyone's got a different profile like that because
it's like it's one of those things that you don't realize. You knew it was going to come up when you're moving premises when the water changes, but you're like drastically how it changes the beer. It's actually it's a nice thing to see.
The spectrum really. So.
Kind of helps you sort of evolve as a brewery again.
It's challenging.
Yeah, it's a good thing about that. Yeah, absolutely.
But if you don't have to do I'm
also
happy.
It's great. And you at the same time. It's like I wish we didn't have to change our water supply.
But water from the Mourne Mountains sounds a lot more appealing than water from Loch Ness.
Good water cannon water.
Water cannon water. Yeah.
Good for our house driveway.
So hard water for the cannons.
Yeah, they're using all our bloody water with these water cannons up in the north.
Yeah, hose ban soon.
Going to be a hose ban again.
Shortage. Just saw something here because just go off the topic again, just on cans and beers and packaging, like that's come up a few times, is that the move from bottles to cans has been, I think, surprised a lot of people that it's a demand. But I'm just seeing here, Carl Mark O'Neill, who knows something about retail, he's on about that maybe pint cans or pint and going back to bottles.
What's the fixation with size?
What would Freud have to say about that?
Carl Mark, do you want to just qualify that? He's saying the can's 440 ml, as the bottle is 500, and in a pub talking about the full pint, which is 568, and why don't we have 568 ml cans? So is there any good reason for it? or is it just pricing or getting a price point?
You don't have pricing.
Yeah, availability.
I think availability of the cans and stuff as well, and a lot of the machines are set up for 440. So Europe, like standard across Europe. I guess Arbor, one of the breweries over in Bristol, do pint cans, and it goes well for them. But generally, it's harder to source the cans during the pandemic. It's been hard enough to source cans without having to find 5, 6, 8 ml cans.
Yeah. With the shortage of just raw materials during the pandemic, it was harder to get cans because obviously a lot of the big microbreweries were only selling in cans. So that therefore there was a spike in demand. So there was less raw materials to be able to make cans. So there was just a time where we were like, we're going to struggle to actually get a pallet of cans here because all the big breweries are like just taking them. So, I mean, just wrapping them up during the pandemic.
Did the prices go up well, or is it just a lack of availability?
No, the prices didn't actually go up. It was just more availability. Yeah, it was kind of like thankfully the price didn't go up. Yeah.
Even the macros use 500 ml cans. They're not using 565 or whatever. It's 568. You know, so it's to be honest with you, like if you're putting something that's 6 or 7 or 8% a can, I actually think 440 is probably pushing the boundary as it is. You know that it's not quite a point. And then it's a trade-off. Like if you put stuff into, we do all our stuff in 440s purely for simplicity. Like all our stuff is the same size, just for make pallets and everything. But you're putting stuff into 330s. Like if that's your go-to size, like I still think that's a fine size for if you're having an 8%.
And the pricing's going to be proportionate as well. Like we did a big stout, over 10% stout called outside a while back, and in a 440 can, like it's pricey, with a 10%, high duty mark, the cost, just the per unit cost at that serving size is actually pretty high.
It's like 7 or 8 quid, I think, for a can. And if you're going into a bar to be having 440 mils of that, of a 10% MP stout, you're going to have a third of a pint maybe.
Yeah.
You're not going to be, you wouldn't be having 2/3, or you'd never have a pint of that in a bar.
Yeah,
I think pricing is probably not the biggest concern really with craft beer, because if people want, it's like most craft beer drinkers aren't out trying to get these stuff is but they want to get something nice to drink. So I think pricing is a secondary concern over the quality, and I think. It's just, like you guys are saying, it is availability, really. That's what it comes down to. We've got 2 options from our canners, 33 or 440, 330, 440, and we just go with 440. And you have to do, like the guys are saying as well earlier on, you have to do the labels up, a week lead time on your labels and stuff. It's just simple. It just keeps things simple, really, is the answer.
Yeah, I think there's also like there's also that sort of thing where the consumer feels that they're getting more for their money with a 440. For some reason, I think they're getting a better value having a 440 can than a 330.
Yeah.
So I mean, even like the ABV doesn't seem to come into it. So I mean, because like obviously we're all sort of we know we're a crack with like ABV and how duty works and things. It's like, well, if that's a 10 ABV, if I'm getting that in a 330 and putting in the 6% and 440, I'll probably go for the 330. Do you know what I mean? Like
I think that's something. It's like an education thing with especially around the consumers, the publicans and the guys in the bottle shops and stuff. Initially, we're right 500 ml bottle or nothing else. We're not going to take cans. Nothing. 330 ml bottles won't cut it. Like nobody wants to buy them.
Yeah.
But I think consumers are becoming more savvy and more educated, and more, they're worried more about the flavour and not so much about the price point. Then it's become less of an issue for them. But initially, at the start, like it was 500 ml bottles or nothing else. That was pretty much.
That's what drove when we opened up 4 or 5 years ago. That's why we're doing bottles basically, but because that was what it was driving is everyone was like, we want 500 ml bottles and. I'm glad, now it's changed that way, and I think I'd agree that the 440 ml can seems to be the way.
Yeah,
because it's that good balance between, you've got enough, and for some of these stronger strength or not even stronger strength, but more like flavorful, like impact flavor beers. That's a good size for that, especially for sharing too. I think it's enough to share a beer if you get a 10% barrel aged thing in a can, and you split it with someone. It's a good size for that.
Yeah, I could see it being a difference on the drink as well, and as you said, the flavor. Like, I mean, I know, the craft beers, but then sometimes I get people send me, and I've got pint cans from Lithuania, say, but they're much weaker at the time, but they're nice. It's nice sometimes that pint and have a weaker difference between an espresso and a full cup of coffee. Sometimes you want something that lasts a bit longer than that, but.
Especially in Ireland, I think we kind of guzzle beer a wee bit as well. So we're used to having like a pint and just sitting.
Yeah.
You can have a go at it without 2 or 3 of them, and you're not going to be wobbly when you get up. But with craft beer, it's a bit different, especially with that stout that we did. It was like, you had one of them, and you got up, and it was like you're on a bouncy castle or something. But yeah, so see that.
But you don't see it changing. By the way, Lar has opened his first of his rabbit hole, so he's
We're waiting for the progress updates.
Ryan just mentioned here, I didn't see it, I didn't know this, but Boundary seemingly had did they have a beer they called works out as £8 a pint?
Yeah, somebody did that one.
I think the price thing is more relevant for draft, to be honest with you.
I think so.
I think it's a small pack concern, and certain beers are designed for selling on draft, and other ones just won't work. So
we don't really have to think about draft too much up here, because they're all tied. So
well, it's the same down here. They're effectively tied down here, guys. I mean,
so we're tied more, actually. So we're actually more tied.
No, it's the same. It's the same.
Don't you? You have room up there, don't you?
No, not legally. We have to borrow occasional licenses.
It is legal. It is legal.
It's legal. Yeah,
it's legal.
So we've actually been working. So we've been lobbying Stormont. There's a bill at the minute going through Stormont. We've been working with the ICBI actually to see how the bill in the south worked and the outworkings of that, because the politicians here are very keen to look at the south rather than looking across at GB. We'd rather they looked at GB in terms of the tap rooms over there and how easy it is to get a license. So unfortunately, I won't look at GB because the island of Ireland, the legislation is so similar. They won't look at GB. But we're trying to lobby to allow us to have permanent tap rooms. But it looks like we're going to have something similar to what has happened in the south, and with the 6 p.m. close down and things like that. Unless you get a full pub license, and a full pub license is at the minute it's incredibly difficult to get because nobody's selling a license because the government is paying all this money for people to keep their pubs closed. Nobody wants to sell their license while they're getting all the funding from the government.
It's you have to extinguish a license up there the same as down here.
So I think the whole island it goes back to 1902 or 1906 or something like that. And pre-partition, and it was the prohibitionist movement, and it was an appeasement to the prohibitionist movement to put a cap on the amount of licenses, and unfortunately it hasn't moved on since then. So
we're all in the same boat effectively.
Okay, all right, I feel your pain.
Is it the same with you guys? Because when we're applying for a taproom license up here, anytime we do a taproom license, we have to borrow an occasional license from a publican, because each pub or each licensee has about 12 to 13 licenses per year.
Occasional licenses.
Occasional licenses. So then we have to borrow one of those licenses, bring it to the court, and then the court has to sign off on it, and then we can use that occasional license. And it takes about 2 weeks to probably do. So when you're actually advertising a tap room, you actually don't know if it's going to be or not. So you have to wait before you can actually announce it before it comes through. Is that something that you guys have to do as well if you're doing tap rooms occasionally?
I haven't done one myself, so I can't tell you. But I think it sounds like it's the same.
The one we have here is we ended up just getting a restaurant license, and we sell pizza.
So you have to sell food
basically under that restaurant license. We end up we sell food here so we can serve beer.
Yeah, and the issue is that
because it was just too much to that way. So it's a pizza oven, and that's the only thing we offer is pizza.
Yeah, that's the same. Walled City up in Derry, that their tap room is basically a restaurant, just where you can get your like tasting platters and stuff as well. So it is like dressed up like a tap room, but it's basically a restaurant just so they can get by them. But it's ridiculous. Like
the issue is that though is you have to get planning permission for a restaurant, and then you have to get pay your rates as a restaurant. So you're not, it might be a manufacturing facility, but you have to zone a certain aspect or portion of this facility as a restaurant, which rates on a restaurant are a lot higher, obviously. So it's difficult. And then you have to run a kitchen and all that. So it's
different games.
Yeah. We were getting, I know maybe it's the same up there. Well, I suppose the thing we have done here is you can get a producer's retail license, so you can sell the beer yourself directly.
So that's what they're we can't do that, but the bill at the minute is to allow us to bring us into line with the South to allow us to do that.
Yeah, which would be, it would go some way, it'd be a bit of a help definitely to be able to do that, but still it's not exactly like the dream scenario, but we'll take it, absolutely.
Yeah, and the improvement is an improvement.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen, guys, I won't hold you any longer. We had all the technical issues at the start, but we got over those, so hopefully everybody had fun. I enjoyed it, and I'm sure we could keep going for hours, but you have to go back and open your own beers before they start going off in the best before dates. Well, listen,
I want to stay on here and see when Lar comes on again in about an hour's time.
Lar, one last go. Raise your hand there, and we'll find him. No, I think he's disappeared, actually.
He's gone, yeah, he's down the rabbit hole.
He's gone, that's it. So that's good stuff. Listen, you were all good enough as well to put up a couple of t-shirts, so I'll just pick people who are here commenting and stuff, so if you don't mind, I'll just call out some names. So Winning, Lauren Savage, if we can get in touch with him. Julie Allman, Neil White, Carol Mark O'Neill, and Brian Cahill. So you were all commenting, so we'll give you a t-shirt from one of the groups, one of the lads there. If that's okay with you, I'll collect the email addresses and send it on to you. So that's it for today. Next week we actually have an interesting one because we have Trouble, we have Brewmaster, we have Peak from Belgium. So that could be an interesting one to see basically what look like the difference between Belgium and Ireland, and hey, let's just see what kind of chats. I think they have it much easier with tap room licenses and bar licenses and restaurant licenses than here. So
yeah, they're treated like grown-ups over there. Yeah,
anytime we want. We'll find out about that. And then the following week is the start. I thought you lads know. I know, Mike, you know about it. Our thing with Lars and Simonis about Lithuanian farmhouse beers. So that's 2 weeks of that. Should be very good because, well, they know everything, and Lithuania seemingly has a lot of very unique beers that are widely available. So should be interesting. So maybe we leave it at that. Listen, it's a million. Anybody want to say anything before we go, or they come in here? Nope.
No, just thanks very much.
Yes,
very much.
nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's nice meeting you guys too. It's I hadn't met you guys at all before, so it's great.
Well, that's what the idea is around. Just kind of get to talk, because we're going to be expanding out a bit once we get past our one with ours. Now we have a lot of brewers coming on from around, Estonia, Belgium, Romania, a couple of them coming on. So it should be interesting for a few weeks, and hopefully I'll come back. So I'm just going to tell outro video here just for who's coming on next week, and we leave it at that. Thanks.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Let me play this and we'll go.